So this is an experimental, very experimental segment. All right. You know, one thing that's really crazy to me is I talk a lot about like guys' issues, mainly because one, I am a dude and I've been through the ringer and I understand. I think it's always good to have some like normal dude online, just at least from my perspective, because that's what I am, just some normal dude just making a video and posting it on his personal channel. Like why I care about men's issues so much. If I were like looking on it from the outside and some like random dude is just kind of giving some advice, like some human advice, not like some of these big names and everything like that, like not some of these like guys who are obviously living in this like fame bubble or something like that. I don't really think they really would know what it's like to walk in the shoes of like just an average person who has to get up, go to work, all this stuff, has to work a normal job, because there could only be really so many massive influencers. But like, it's just kind of like I like to see the struggles of like normal everyday people who have turned like the comedy aspects of their life into a channel overall to it's kind of like a more human aspect, not so glitz and glam where they've obviously put on tons of hours of makeup. And then on this episode of Chelsea TV on YouTube, it's like you watch the YouTube slowly become commercialized, just kind of like actual cable television was. And then like, it's funny, you become the very thing you were trying to run away from. But you get my drift. Like if I was looking and seeing some like normal schmo making videos, I'd probably be able to like feel like he would have more solid advice for me in the long run. I think that's why I talk about this, is because, who are the dudes that like go online and they look for these like really good role models? Because obviously the role models aren't really there for my generation. I feel that. Like, I mean, I'm not saying my parents like were not present, because they were and they did their best, but it was almost like there was this sheet of ice. That's the way I could say it. Like when I was trying to talk to him about my issues, it was like having a sheet of ice over my head, and I'm banging on this sheet of ice, and it's almost like they could see me and they could hear me talk, but they couldn't quite put themselves in their shoes. I think it's just like the way a lot of people in my family are. Is like, people in my family were just like naturally sometimes myopic and just sometimes like very in our own bubble sometimes, at least from what I see. Sometimes there are these weird family dynamics where I realized I saw the more sensitive side of my family members after we were arguing or something like that, and they were saying something harsh and then I'd say something harsh like right back, and then all of a sudden like something clicks and they go from like these hard asses over to like, I didn't even realize you had feelings, man. I'm sorry. But you get what I'm saying. It's just, I understand what it's like to kind of have like this veil over and not have like a guide. Because even if like they knew the answers to everything from their time, it's not going to line up to what we need for our time. That's why like I'm always like it would really be beneficial if like the current generations that are struggling in this new world like actually said, hey, we're in this together. Like, we're really in this together because we got to figure this stuff out, like, long term. But what I'm talking about is all these guys don't have, like, solid role models or any sense of community. So what do? They go to these, like, corners of the internet. And that's where they find like the Sneakos and the Zerkas and all those things. And the thing about like the red pill sphere is like they say a lot of truth, but you know what they talk about is like the most dangerous lie is the one with truth in it. And they definitely bring like men's issues to life, but it's like, are you saying this because you actually care or because you're trying to get an audience and gain some clout? It's one of those things where it's like, you have somebody who lied to you in the past, and then they come back and they're trying to butter you up, and then you're like, what are you about? Like, because it's a messed up part of life. Like the most vulnerable people usually get picked up. It's like when you see like the tales of Darth Vader in Star Wars Episode 3. He became Darth Vader when he was at his most vulnerable state. You know, it's actually a really sad story because he was at his most vulnerable, his most weak. And ironically, if the Jedi Order had allowed human emotion, I think he would have gotten some really good guidance, or he wouldn't feel so pressed in a corner. Like, you know, Jedi are allowed to have families too. Just like modern day priests, some actually have families, like some who are deacons and stuff like that. You know, like, why can't men of God have families? But I'm sidetracking, just random wisdom again. It's Sunday. I'm not really putting too much format into what I'm making right now. I'm just kind of like turning on the camera and showing the more human, non-scripted side this episode of whatever this is. That's what I could call it. But it's real. It's like, yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, like they don't. It just kind of seems like they get led astray by false shepherds, because we all see, like, when I see like things like Sneeko getting punched in the face by like some dude, you know, like one of the things they taught us in martial arts classes, don't like hit someone, don't be the first one to instigate any sort of physical contact. I've seen all sorts of angles of what went down. All I know is Sneeko's kind of a pathological liar. Even if he wasn't the one who instigated that whole thing somehow, we still know his history with Brennan Buckingham, and like I'm a follower of that channel, and Buckingham's a very genuine guy, I guess you could say. That's one of the guys who, like, if he had some interesting like words of wisdom for his audience, I would really kind of like try to take it with a little bit more than a grain of salt, and like maybe like look up to it, because he's actually seems like a really just overall chill guy. And he's exposed a lot of like frauds on YouTube, a lot of fake people. He knows how to handle those things. He knows how to make sure, like how he handled the whole thing with Danny Mullen and all of his beefs and everything like that. He just seemed like the most. So when you see his stuff with Sneeko, it just kind of looked like me. It was like yeah, Sneeko is just obviously a pathological liar. So I was like, obviously he's prone to starting things and then he's not willing to finish them. And then that sets a bad example for a lot of the kids who watch him, a lot of the kids who feel like no one's really looking out for them. And like you see that whole thing is they're going to take some bad advice from someone who's just going to lead them astray when they're really at a vulnerable and confused state. You know, and I empathize with someone who just kind of feels lost. I've also been lost in my time, and the times I was most lost, those were the times I was open to some more radical changes in my life. Not like politically radical, but I just kind of noticed that, you know, the biggest ideological shifts, like what happened when I was in BJJ early. I was actually in a very vulnerable state. I had gotten out of a really bad relationship, really like emotionally just turmoil inducing, and I handle it. I was lost. I literally was pointing the finger at myself, blaming myself for the abuse I was undergoing, which in a case, you know, it is on us to walk away from abusers. But like guys like Zerka too, like you could tell anyone who's a Freemason right now is probably having a field day, because like for example with Zerka, I had a buddy who was very emotionally lost as a guy. And he's like a couple years younger than me, so it's like he's around the same ballpark, but it's not like I'm like mentoring him. He's a grown guy too. But he sends me that video of Zerka's interview where he's like taking down the Freemasons in one interview with Gary. And I don't have really too much to say about Gary, the numbers guy. I think Gary's actually pretty genuine. But like you look at Zerka and how he was, I really didn't think me and this guy were watching the same interview, because it was like he's just shouting over him the whole time, and you know, and then he gets this self-righteous like thinking like, oh well, at least I'm not a Freemason who sold his soul to be on YouTube. I got here like 110% by myself. It's just like, not everyone who's on YouTube sold their soul. Some of them just made good content. It's like Now, I can't even say that anyone on YouTube sold their soul because I really just don't know. I'm not behind those closed doors. But, you know, and it also is like those people who like wonder that stuff, like people who are into conspiracies and stuff like that, like hidden things that go on that have gone on unreported in human history. It just makes them look bad too. And he was one of those big red pillar dudes too. But he was like breaking every rule he laid out. For people, like it was kind of rules for me, not for thee. And why does he get to break his own rules? Because he's the famous Twitch streamer. He was just basically, you know, the same as every other mainstream Twitch streamer who looks down on their audience. The only thing is he believes the world is flat. And it just kind of was like, wow, I saw all these dudes hanging around this guy because he seemed to have all these answers, right? He like seemed to have his work cut out for him. But like he was just feeding him snake oil, dude. It's really actually sad, you know, because now it's just like, it's like, man, you know, it's like these guys who needed a guide found that, you know, and like you look at what he's going through, you know, it's like, and people who are fans of his, just like they're fans of Sneeko and some of these other dudes, they have to look at themselves again and say I was duped, when probably already they're already challenging some massive confusing times in their wakes, you know. So I don't know, for me it's just that's why I like to see, you know, a bit of humanity to that aspect, because I am just like this normal dude. I'm not coming here with some hidden agenda. And honestly, I actually do care about what these guys are going through, just because I understand, like what I'm doing right now, a camera with video games, with running electricity. You know, you got to be understanding of how grateful you should be for certain things. And I think a lot of these guys don't really appreciate at least the silver lining around the clouds. You know, at least we're living in a good, you know, in a good area. Like at least we don't have to worry about having things, you know, dropped on our heads as we speak. You know, so, but also it's like it takes guys and it takes a lot of, you know, hard work and labor to keep the gears of society running. And you know, when you see like guys who are just like I'm going to be hated no matter what, why grind my wheels in the mud for a society that just doesn't seem to care about them? I get that, and I don't want to see that disaster, because, you know, whether we admit it or not, once these dudes walk away, and once these guys, you know, say I don't want to have enough, like you got to look at what they're doing with the drafts and everything like that too. They need numbers, and we're in a time of a lot of political tension too. So I think we've painted ourselves into this corner. And I think it's going to be crunch time a lot sooner than we think. I just think that, you know, if we don't check ourselves or understand that everyone as a whole is like part of a society, I think we're going to fail. And it's not just like bringing back the red pill or bringing back everything. It's like you got to call out toxic behavior and just like this big wave of narcissism. Like, and you know, a lot of these self-help talkers too are doing it just because they're gaining views. It's not because they actually want to give people advice. They're doing it because, you know, they want viewerships and they realize people are eating it up, so they're exploiting a side of human weakness. It's actually really sad. It's actually just really, you know, hard to watch, and I actually do genuinely care about stuff like that. I'm not saying it because, you know, I think I was going to be popular. I've realized I do make a lot of content that gives, you know, a lot of guys, you know, a lot of different advices that they can or cannot follow. Because look, if you disagree, you disagree. I'm not saying that because I say this online, or you tune into this episode, or you tune into a lot of this, you're going to be, you know, I have all the answers. I'm just trying to give you at least something that doesn't seem like it's coming from a bubble that maybe you could take something from, and take it with a grain of salt. Like, because obviously I don't know everybody's life. I don't know everybody like that, but at least I do know, and I'm a little awake to the fact that society overall, not just men, are hurting. And I think like we need to bring back like a actual good role model of for guys, like maybe like an Aragorn or something like that. Like I watched some videos on YouTube about Aragorn being the perfect, healthy masculinity. And the more I watched Lord of the Rings after that, like the more I was sold on that. Oh, dude, like Aragorn really is, Aragorn really knows what's up. Like you watch how that dude fights, and kind of like tries to always be the one to save and everything like that. Like that's a hero right there. Like, and that would actually be pretty cool. Like if we actually had a society that was filled to the brim with dudes who would be willing to go to war with a bunch of Uruk-hai like that. That would be, like, without a doubt, really awesome. Like, I would definitely be signing up for that Rohirrim charge, because I know, like, I'd have a ton of, like, just total, like, authentic Chads to roll into the battlefield with. But, yeah, no, I mean, that's just it. I think also, like, my closing thing, because I've been rambling a bit. It's, like, a bit of, like, just a therapy session, I guess, for me. Because I acknowledge we are really just in the age where everyone's like on their computers and not really connected, and the communities are kind of dead. And I feel that too. I'm not this guy who's so Sigma he's above the loneliness. I'm just so Sigma I know how to channel everything. And channeling it into these videos actually really has helped me overcome a lot of like the dark sides of that we all think, because I think everyone has these demons that they're facing, especially in like the 2020s right now, and it's there's some hurting going on. And I think the only way we really move forward on all that hurt is if we just kind of like admit that we're human, we have tendencies to feel these negative emotions, we have tendencies. It doesn't mean you have to dwell on them or make them your whole forefront or make it a victim mentality thing, but I think sometimes you want to acknowledge that there's a problem so that way you could fix it. What I'm saying is, it's just like for guys, it's like a lot of them just seem like super lost. And I think my closing like thing that I would want to say though is I think a lot of it just does stem from a lack of relationships. Here's the thing: is relationships are not all fun and games when you get down to it. I know like the like if you ever watched 500 Days of Summer, I love that movie because it tells us about like kind of a more realistic take of how relationships usually end after they start. They usually start really good, and then there's drama, you get all this stuff, but I think that's what causes guys to like get in that hopeless romantic mindset and everything. That kind of leads down this path where eventually they are gonna run into someone who acts like Zerk, or someone who's a Sneeko, or one of those guys, because it just kind of seems like they have to not romanticize it so much. And when you do get into one, if you want to maintain one, you have to like really come at it with a realistic stand, and understand that there are going to be good times in those relationships, but also acknowledging that there's some serious times of challenge for every relationship that are going to see if you guys are really compatible. And that's the number one thing, is it is a two-way street. I'm not saying to forego any sort of toxic behavior, whether you're a guy or a girl. I mean, this doesn't just go out to guys, but to girls too. It does take a lot of work. I do remember when I was growing up around my family, every now and again my mom and dad would have some serious arguments, and what they did, they talked it out, and they made their relationship work because they put how much time into it. And we really do want to throw away anything that's not perfect, or we always hold this standard for perfection of what something should be, mainly because of movies. But like, if you're really living in real life, you understand like relationships not all peaches and cream and everything like that. But I think that would probably be a good first step. I actually do want to make just more of these random rambling things, because it actually has been pretty fun to make this. It's not going to be so much fun to just put it together and edit it, but I'm glad I just gave myself the opportunity to make this one. But yeah, peace out. Hope you guys are having a really good day. I know we're living in some rough times. Let's try to at least make it easier on yourself. I think spreading some kindness and decency goes a long way, because life's just hard enough as it is. But peace out.